Alright, let's craft. And today we're going to be making some fall pumpkin decor with items that you can find from the Dollar Tree or Dollar Store or even online for very reasonable costs to make a rustic, high-end looking item for your home for the fall. Think, like West Elm, think a CB2 pottery barn, something like that. We're going to start with the terracotta crackle effect, and then we're going to lean into doing the concrete dipped pumpkin. I really love her. And then we're gonna end off with the white textured plaster pumpkin. I'll show you all three, so keep watching to learn how. So here I have some air dry clay and terracotta as well as a foam pumpkin from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to take some of the air dry clay and roll it in my hands and making like a tube shape to make the shape of a stem, pushing the top down, smoothing the cracks and the creases because this air dry clay does tend to crack a little bit if not smoothed, and we don't want that. So we're going to push it down onto the foam stem, making sure all the clay covers the foam stem. And it is going to thin out a little bit, no big deal, because we're just going to add a little bit more clay to build up that thickness again, because we do want it to be a consistent thickness all around. We want to make sure that you put your clay pushed into the crevices of the foam and into the clay existing there, and making a nice, clean, smooth connection to each other. Once that is done to your liking and it is all nice and secure, we're going to go into our next step. The next step is going to be making the concrete covering. We're going to take a bowl. You can use any kind of bowl or any kind of bucket works. You can tell that I work with concrete a lot because I have this concrete bucket. And I'm going to add about a half cup of water, and then I'm going to add about a cup and a quarter of concrete, and I'm going to have about a half a cup sitting on the side to thicken my concrete up a little more. With concrete and doing crafts like this, you don't have to be perfect, so it's good to have a little concrete and a little water extra. I don't even add fortifier when I'm doing a craft like this because it's unneeded. So next I'm going to take my drill with my concrete attachment. You could easily use a kitchen whisk, works great with this, and just blend it up till all your lumps are all gone. We're looking for kind of like a milkshake to a batter kind of consistency. Now it's better to have it a little thinner in the beginning because concrete does tend to thicken up pretty quickly. As you can see here, it is a little thinner than I like. I did this one twice, so the one we see later was the first sample I did. This one was just a little thinner. If that happens to you, you can either add a little more concrete or you can let it sit for 2 to 5 minutes. Those 2 to 5 minutes will actually thicken your concrete up significantly to the point where you want to watch it. You don't want to walk away to concrete you're about to use because it does start to harden immediately and start to create that chemical reaction. So what I'm doing here is I'm just covering it in a thin coat. Now you could do 2 coats, do like one thin coat and then go back and do an overcoat. I would suggest that because you're going to have a better chance of the concrete staying adhered and being stronger. Now you do want to go up to the stem. Now also, I didn't really wait for the stem to fully dry. I let it kind of sit there for maybe like an hour or two. You don't have to let the stem dry overnight, and I actually think it's a little better if it's not fully dry because concrete in itself wants to be sucking up moisture, so it kind of works perfectly fine with each other. But once this is all nice and covered, I would let it sit on top of something that you can get off. So something plastic, a plastic tub works. I'm using like a Cool Whip bin right here because you can easily just pop that off when it needs to come off and kind of chip the excess concrete from it sitting there. Perfectly easy, really simple. And here we are with the finished product. Now at the end I did add a little tie to the top. I just took a little jute rope and untwisted it from another piece, so that kind of gave it a little curl to it, and just tied it onto there. I really like how that pulls in that rustic feel. I situated it with some other pumpkins, a little pumpkin spice candle in there, some faux leaves. It's just a really nice cute way to add a bit of rustic texture to your fall decor. Alright, so here we have some air dry clay and a foam pumpkin from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to take some of that clay and roll it in my hand, kind of a tube shape, making a stem, kind of flatten the top, smoothing the creases out. Doesn't have to be perfect, it's going to be rustic. We're going to stick that clay stem on top of the foam stem, covering the whole stem up, using that foam as a base for the clay. If you need a little extra clay, you can easily add a little more to the bottom and just make sure you have it smoothed out. I'm kind of smoothing the top a little more to make it look more like a stem. You could even carve a little bit in there with a clay tool if you wanted to make it more realistic. I really like how the texture plays here. I don't try to be perfect at all. I kind of mold a lot of the creases out, but I leave some of them in there too. So it's just up to your liking. Next, I'm going to throw some gloves on because this next step we are going to use my favorite, all-purpose joint compound. This stuff is great for so many crafts. It's kind of like icing a cake. So I think if I did this again, I think I would use, it sounds crazy, but I think I would use a fork because it's foam to hold it, because it does get a little tricky holding this and smearing this on after a while. You are going to get it on your hands, and if you are a person that likes things perfect, this might not be for you. But it does add a really cool effect to it. So I'm just going to go around adding the joint compound, covering every little bit of the white foam with it. There is like a joint in the middle from where they join the foam together, so I make note to make sure that I cover that pretty well. And I just go all the way up to the stem. I don't really try to get onto the stem, but if you did get onto the stem, I think you could easily just kind of add a little whitewash to the stem. Would look really cool to pull that in there, or you could easily, while it's dry, take a little damp rag and wipe the joint compound off the clay. Now I didn't let the clay dry too much. I let it dry for maybe an hour before I started putting this on there. I didn't seem to have any big problem with it. I tried it both ways. So once you have it all covered to your liking and texture to your liking, you want to make sure that you have the grooves in it. That's important too. So it doesn't look like a fruit or apple. But you're just going to let that sit and dry overnight. And here we have it all set up with some other faux pumpkins, some real pumpkins. I put some jute rope onto the top of the pumpkin just to kind of pull in that rustic touch a little more. But I really like how this adds an unexpected kind of texture as well as like a light quality to all the orange and all the dark fall colors. But it's a great way just to brighten up your fall decor. Alright, so here is some air dry clay and a foam pumpkin from the Dollar Tree. The clay's in terracotta and the pumpkin that was painted black already, which would be perfect for this DIY. We're going to start off by covering the pumpkin in sheets about a ½ inch thick of the terracotta colored clay. I would say it's going to take about 2 packs of the clay to do the body and a little less than a half to do the stem. And we're just going to make sure that we cover this all up. You want to make sure that the seams are nice and molded together because you don't want a big piece of this coming off. So it's important to make sure that it's all uniformly molded together in one piece. I started to use my palm at the end. I found that that helped a lot to kind of mold it together. You could use like a little clay tool, but just keep smoothing, take your time. It doesn't have to be perfect, as you can see here. Next, we're going to work on the stem. Now I just took a little piece off, I rolled it a little bit, and then I used a little carving tool to kind of create that stem vibe a little more on there, and I molded it on there. It's important to get that stem on there. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be secure. And then we're going to go down the pumpkin and kind of create those pumpkin lines again. Now you could press your clay down even more than I did to have the ones that are already defined there, or you can just add a bunch more of these in like I did too, which I kind of like the effect of having these little lines in there, kind of creates a more rustic vibe, this imperfection, that is just really charming. So I did add a little more clay there because I felt that it did thin out a little bit, so use your best judgment because this is going to have a crackle effect, mind you, and you don't want it to crack off, you want it to crackle. So we're just going up and down with the lines, making it look like a pumpkin, not an apple. And once you're done with that, we're going to wrap it in some saran wrap. Now we're going to keep it wrapped in saran wrap for about 12 hours, then take it out and let it air dry the rest of the time. Then you'll start to see the cracks form and let it continue to dry for about 24 more hours. Then after that, we're going to take some matte clear spray paints and spray paint a couple coats onto this. I found a really cool effect that it creates this like white effect on there, and it also helps secure the crackle effect onto the pumpkin. Alright, and here we have it in a little setting with some other pumpkins and some artificial pumpkins, a glass pumpkin, some fall leaves, the pumpkin spice candle. I did add a little twine to the top just to add a little more rusticness to it, tuck some leaves around it. I really like how it looks aged. It gives it a nice little heftiness to the pumpkin, and the spray paint really helps everything set in there so it's not going to fall off. And here we have all three together, our concrete, terracotta, and joy compound. And I love how simple, quick, and affordable these were to make. These are super easy to do for some indoor decor, a middle of a table, just really nice, quick decor for the fall season.